everyone, welcome to Online Piano Learning. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and my channel is all about learning piano and all the other musicianship skills that will help you become a better musician. So feel free to subscribe down below if you haven't yet, so you don't miss any new videos. Today, we are going to talk about metronomes and how to use one properly. The first thing I want to explain, if you've never heard of the term metronome and you don't know what that is, a metronome looks like this, or it can look like this, or it could just be an app on your phone. All of these devices are going to help you keep the beat by making clicking sounds at a consistent tempo. As musicians, we use metronomes to work on getting a steady tempo and to slowly work our tempo up to a faster tempo if needed. When you're using a metronome, you have to decide which BPM you want for the tempo. BPM means beats per minute. You are going to hear that many clicks per minute. So for example, if you choose 60 BPM, that should equal to 1 second for each beat. Something in the 200s would be very fast, and something like 1 or 2 would be very slow because that's only 1 or 2 clicks per minute. You probably won't use 1 BPM, but it's good to understand what it is so that when you're choosing a number, you're not just selecting a random number, you know exactly what it means. When you are learning a piece of music, usually on the first page, top left corner, underneath the title, you will see the tempo marking. Sometimes the composer will say 1 quarter note equals 100. What that means is that 1 quarter note will go along with each click. You could also have a different note value, like half note equals 120, or an eighth note equals 180. And what these mean is that that's the type of note that will be getting 1 click. You might also not see a number at the tempo marking, but you could see something like allegro, which means fast, allegretto, which means fast, but not as fast as allegro, lento, which means slow, or presto, which means really fast. All of these tempos have a range of BPM that would be acceptable for that tempo. Let's quickly talk about what kind of metronomes you have to choose from. So I mentioned that there were multiple types, including this, the traditional metronome. A traditional metronome has a pendulum that goes back and forth. There's also a part on there that can slide up and down, and behind that pendulum you will see the range of tempos, and you have to slide it up to the tempo that you want. You also have to wind it up on the side. Once you've done that, when you move the pendulum, then your metronome should be clicking at that tempo. The great thing about using a traditional metronome is that unlike digital options, you don't need batteries, you don't need a smartphone, which means less distractions and you can focus better on your music. One of the cons of using a traditional metronome is that sometimes it just gets old and it starts slowing down. Once you notice that your metronome isn't even going at a steady tempo, then you might want to switch to a different metronome. The second type of metronome that we have is a digital one. It usually looks something like this. You'll need batteries, and then you can just select whatever tempo you have, and that's pretty good. The third type of metronome we have is apps. These days, there's basically an app for everything, and so that means there's good apps, there's bad apps, and what I recommend is just finding the simplest app that you can use, because you don't want something with a million ads, you don't want something that has a million options that you're not going to use, so really a super basic one would be good. It's not complicated at all. Personally, I think the simpler the app, the better. The great thing about using apps is that you probably have your smartphone with you all the time, so that will make it easier to get a hold of. The bad thing is that you're going to be using your metronome and then all of a sudden you get a text message from a friend, you really want to reply, but you're practicing, but you shouldn't reply, but you reply anyways, and then you stop practicing. So that is one of the risks of using your phone for your metronome, but of course it is very reliable. Unless your phone runs out of battery, then it's all good. Now that takes me to the next point, which is for apps and digital metronomes. So you'll see a lot of the time when you look for an app, there will usually be a setting that says 3/4, 4/4, 2/4, or whatever you choose. This feature is also found in a lot of digital pianos. If you have a built-in metronome, it's usually like this. And one of my suggestions for those metronomes, so it goes like, there's a different pitch for the first beat of every bar. So if you put 2/4, then it's only 2 beats. If it's 3/4, then it's only 3. And usually there's an option to select 1/4, and I always select this just so that all the clicks are at the same pitch. Because what I find happens is that when there's a different pitch for beat 1, and you're practicing with the metronome, so that doesn't mean that you have to play perfectly. It's practice. It's normal to make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, you have to wait all the way till beat 1 to line it up with the clicks. Otherwise, the high-pitched click on beat 1 is now on beat 2, and then it's on 3, and then it's on 4, and it just gets really confusing. And that's why I just recommend keeping it simple, getting the same sound for the clicks. And that should allow you to, if you make a mistake, you just keep on going. You don't have to wait forever to try to match it up with that high-pitched click in that app. Now, the next thing I will talk about is how to actually use the metronome to your advantage. I think that most students have a love-hate relationship with the metronome. They usually hate me when I ask them to use the metronome, but once they see the results that the metronome has helped them achieve, then they're usually pretty happy. But you can just have the metronome clicking in the background and you won't notice that it's on, just kind of leaving it there, and you're not really listening and your rhythm isn't matching up to that tempo. Just because you're lining up notes with the clicks, it doesn't mean that the notes are in the right order and that they're with good rhythm. And the only way to solve this problem would be to count out loud. And that's another thing that a lot of students dread doing, but it's really, really helpful. When you count internally, it's limited because you won't notice some mistakes, and that will cause you to overlook them and not fix them. So count out loud, and if it's too much to practice with the metronome and counting, then just count a few times out loud before you put on the metronome. And when you do put on the metronome, put it on a really, really slow tempo. That way you can still keep track of the counting that you're saying out loud and listening to the clicks and lining up your playing with the clicks. And I know that sounds like a lot. It is a lot. But once you're able to do that, then you can really control your rhythm and your tempo, and that is a crucial aspect of being a musician. The next thing I want to tell you is when you're using the metronome, try to start at a slow tempo and then increase the tempo little by little. This will help you get your pieces up to the tempo that you want them to be in the final performance. And I recommend every time you increase the tempo, increase it by approximately 10 to 20 BPM. 10 should be a little bit more subtle, and then 20 you will probably feel the difference. And then just increase it a little bit in each practice session, and you will eventually be able to reach your goal tempo. Another trick that I always ask my students to do if they're playing a piece with a lot of 8th notes or 16th notes, but let's say, for example, 8th notes. If you have a lot of 8th notes and the piece itself says 1 quarter note equals 100 as your tempo. So that would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But let's say that the rhythm has a lot of 8th notes, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The tricky part about this is that you have to line up the 8th notes exactly in between those two quarter notes. You can't have them 1, 2, 3, and so on. So you get how I'm trying to straighten them out to be exactly in the middle of the beat. It might seem pretty easy at a slower tempo, but when you're trying to go really quickly, it can actually be really easy to make unevenness in eighth notes. My solution to help my students get those eighth notes really clean and directly in that right spot in the middle of the beat is to double the metronome tempo. Instead of going click, 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 the metronome will go click, 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 click. That will help you figure out exactly where that note is in the music. Anyways, that was my advice for using the metronome, and I'm going to insert a quick excerpt here of me practicing with the metronome to show you how it sounds like and how it affects the tempo. I hope that this video was helpful and helps you with your metronome practice. Remember, your metronome is your friend, so give it a chance, and once you see your results, you will definitely appreciate your metronome. In case you're interested in more rhythm content, I do have a rhythm playlist right here that you can check out. It shows you the basics of simple time and compound time and practice clapping rhythms in these time signatures and counting. And I will be adding more complex rhythm videos soon, so make sure to stay tuned. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, and I'll see you next time.